As entrepreneurs, we all have a reason why we chose to leave our 9 to 5 for an 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. I'm here to capture those stories of why we all hustle and grind for our companies. Bill Flynn has collaborated with Alan Mulally, pitched Steve Jobs, accomplished much, failed often, and learned many useful lessons from 30 years of studying the science of success. He is best described as a pragmatic Simon Sinek, an optimist, and an operator. Bill embodies his core purpose, simplified servanthood, by spending each working moment to help create a compassionately productive society by enabling enlightened leaders to focus on the few things that truly matter to their teams and key stakeholders. For having a great business is one way of making a better world. He has worked for and advised hundreds of companies, including startups, where he has a long track record of successfully spanning multiple industries. Bill has been a VP of sales 8 times, twice as a CMO, and once a GM of a division of a $100 million IT services company before he pivoted to becoming a business growth coach in 2016. Prior to, he had 5 successful outcomes, 2 IPOs, and 7 acquisitions, including a turnaround during the 2008 financial crisis. As a coach, in addition to being connected with MG100, Women's Business Collaborative, Mass MEP, Small Giants, and E4All, Bill has earned certifications from Scaling Up, Gravitas Impact, Metronome United, Predictive Index, and the Neuro Leadership Institute. Bill was also nominated for the 2021 Thinkers 50 Radar Award. Bill's best-selling book, Further, Faster, The Vital Few Steps That Take the Guesswork Out of Growth, continues to garner a nearly 5-star rating, generating demand for virtual and in-person national and international speaking opportunities. Bill, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. I really appreciate having you here.
Thanks, Andrew. Glad to be here. Looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Now, you have quite the resume. I know listeners heard in the intro a little bit about what you do, but can you just, to give people a context, a little bit of kind of a high flyby of some of the things that you've accomplished and some of the stuff that you've done?
Yeah, so I like to describe my journey as sort of two parts to it. I did startups for a really long time, 25 years, give or take. I did 10 of them here in the Boston area.
Mm-hmm.
And you talk about, Salt Lake as being sort of the hub of entrepreneurship. Boston's pretty good too. We got MIT, we got Harvard, we got a few good places that spawn some great ideas and some great companies. So I did that for a bunch of years, generally in the sales, marketing, operations side of stuff. I'm not the idea guy. I'm the guy who comes in and helps the idea, flourish, hopefully. And so love doing that. In 2015, I'm most would consider my track record is 5 for 10, which is still pretty good, but I was 5 for 6. I should have stopped. The last 4 were not so good. So after 4 sort of, really kind of rough situations where I ran into what I don't know if I coined this term or I heard it from somebody called founderitis. Founderitis is when you fall in love with your idea and you just think everyone else needs to know what your idea is, as opposed to trying to help someone solve a problem, which is really what great entrepreneurs do. In the last 4, I just ran into a lot of struggle there. And being the sales and marketing guy, it was sort of on me, especially sales guy. And it would, I would be told, well, you're not a very good salesperson then. And I'd say, that may be true, but if you look at the previous, 15, 20 years, I was pretty good at it then. So maybe, I could have gotten really bad at it, but maybe there's something else going on, and they didn't want to hear it. So a lot of, I would say in 5 or 6 years, I went through 4 startups where just either they just fell apart or I left or whatever. And then after that, I said, what do I want to do? Do I want to do an 11th startup? And the answer was yes, if I could figure out how to interview a founder that was crazy, but not too crazy, because you got to be crazy to be a founder. But along the way, I sort of had this experience where I became a coach, for lack of a better term. And this will be one of the stories I tell. I got into a situation where I took over a business from the founder after he sold it, and it imploded soon thereafter due to technical issues. And I had to sort of fix things with a team. And that was a struggle because I didn't know a lot of things. And I said, look, I don't have all the answers. I probably don't have any of the answers. But, I do want us to figure out what it looks like when we get out of this mess. I have some ideas. I like your ideas. And so we sort of painted this sort of vision, if you will, semi-vision. And I said, well, now we need to draw roadmaps from here to there. Each of us has to do that, and I wanted each of the people that were on the team to do that. And it was a great experience. The numbers are great. All that's wonderful. But the best part was when I left to go do the 7th startup, I think, or 6th startup. 2 of the guys who I'd been working with came up to me and said, I just want you to know the thing that you made me do, that roadmap, hated it really hard. But I'm so glad you made me do it because now I kind of know, sort of the teach them how to fish thing.
Yeah.
And I sort of tucked that away and I said, I want to do that again. So that's what I said. How can I do that again? Never having been a really CEO or a founder before, what credibility do I have? So I learned that there were some coaching systems out there, some operating systems and things. I looked at a whole bunch. And so I became a scaling up coach for those who know what it is. It's just one of dozens of business operating systems that are out there. I think the most well-known is EOS.
Yeah.
EOS, Gino was a scaling up coach.
Okay.
He left Vern's orbit and sort of did his own thing, kind of did a mini version of what Vern was doing.
Okay.
So I did that. I'm still doing that. I have had dozens of clients. I work with clients generally for years. And basically I teach them a growth framework, which is based on scaling up, but there's some flaws in scaling up. And so I've sort of, the things that I've learned, I've kind of put patches on, but the foundation is really good. So that's what I do now is I work with leaders in their teams on how to do that. And my approach, I wrote a book about it. But it's all, business books are just rehashing of old stuff. So it's just another one of those, but people like it. Who knows? I've sold hundreds of them. That's good.
Well, and I think that's something that I've noticed in my career as well is that with what I do and what you do and all of these things is that I don't think we're doing anything 1000% novel. I think it's sort of, we're doing our own version of it. And some people resonate with me and some people resonate with you and some people resonate with another person. It's not as much only about the content, it's about the personality as well. And some people really love listening to David Goggins, and hey, it motivates them and that's a really good thing. Others like Simon Sinek, others like these people, and so you're following that person, and I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. So now, first of all, having seen, having been a part of a tech startup that completely imploded thanks to IT issues, I 100% understand the challenges that come with that, and how to make it work and how to clean up this massive mess, which is usually often quite public. How to deal with it. But I want to get a little bit more clarity around kind of like with you. Do you come in now more as like a consultant? So I'm a founder. I have this company I'm trying to get up and going. I'm new. I know I'm going to screw up a bunch of times and part of that is necessary, but maybe having somebody who's saying, hey, dude, I've screwed up the same way. Here's how here's how not to do that again. Is that more kind of where you're at?
So most of my clients are through the product market fit knothole. They already have a business, or what looks like a business. I do executive coaching with founders because I can accelerate their learning. I'm a big Steve Blank fan. I've read, I'm big on Jobs to Be Done. And so I can teach them how to figure out if they are actually solving a problem worth solving more quickly than if they did it themselves. But what I teach, they don't really need to know yet. They're not a real business. I say that you're not a real business. You don't have a business model. You're not a business. Yeah. So let's find that business model. And then once we find that business model, then I can teach you the growth framework and help you to grow a healthy, et cetera. But you don't want to worry. And, I get asked all the time, especially when I was doing speaking and a lot more networking, I would have founders come up to me and say, I saw your resume and so what advice would you give me? And I said, you only really need to solve 2 problems. I said, one, you have to find a problem worth solving and solve it in a way that people actually pay you money for it. And the other is don't run out of money. Those are the only 2 things you have to worry about. You don't have to worry about culture or strategy or, a lot of these things we talk about. You don't have any of that yet. It will just form organically. You don't need to worry about it.
Mm.
And I said, and once you do that, then call me and we'll revisit all the decisions that you made, because a number of them will be wrong, because they don't get you, they got you to here, but they won't get you to, up into the stratosphere.
Yeah.
You got to go revisit the critical decisions that you made. And that's all I do. Is I don't say I'm a consultant. I don't even like saying I'm a coach. I'm much more of a teacher than anything. I jokingly say I'm Socrates with a tool bag. I just ask a bunch of questions that you've rarely never asked or even thought about, which are super basic questions. Like, this is from Scaling Up, but I love it. Is would you enthusiastically rehire everyone on your team now that you know who they are? And whenever I ask a founder that, they laugh and say no.
No.
I said, okay, so that's one of the problems why you're not scaling, is that you don't have the right team around you, and so we got to fix that. And I have dozens of questions like that I ask people, and so that's sort of what I do. I don't tell anyone what to do. I may throw in my 2 cents once in a while, and I say, hey, this is a great topic, and I'll sort of let it flow. I'll keep asking questions. Is there more? Is there more? If there isn't any more, I might say, here's one thing that I experienced that we didn't yet talk about that I'd love to throw in the mix, so you can think about that as well. But my job is not to give answers. My job is to ask really good questions and have you, a great brain trust, come up with the answers.
To provide experience. And I think that's something that, as entrepreneurs, we have mentors, we have coaches, we have that for that reason, because it's like, okay, I screwed this up already. I'm going to show you how not to, or I'm going to say,
look, I'll tell you all my mistakes so you can make your own.
Yeah. But different ones.
Different ones. Yeah. Make your own mistakes, not my mistakes.
Exactly. And I know you refer to yourself a little bit also as the pragmatic Simon Sinek, but one of the before we get into that, one of the things I think that I'm hearing is that you're really good at that transition between the startup side of things, because startups operate really differently than real companies. That transition. It sounds like that's that point that you work in.
That's what I do. I can absolutely, if I wanted to, could help startups. But they don't have any money.
Yeah, not usually.
I get paid an embarrassingly high amount of money for what I do, because the value I provide is if I do my job, your business should be worth tens or hundreds of millions of dollars more than when I started.
Yeah.
So I should basically be free. But they have money, right? And they've seen stuff. Most founders, they have a board of VCs and other people that they're like, oh, well, these people are going to give me all the advice I need, et cetera. They don't want to pay me for that. And I can argue that that's not a really good way to do it, but it's not worth arguing. So I just say, yeah, that's great. And, I'm happy to help you, accelerate you. I can teach you how to do lean customer development and actually have a very good process of how to interview customers so you can learn better than you're learning today. But they don't usually value that very much, so I don't do it.
Well, because a lot of times startups, like you said, startups don't have money, and having been a part of them, my very first professional job was at a small med tech startup. So I've seen this over the years where they don't have money. It's often an equity play, and they don't really. There's a different value proposition they would put to somebody in your world. So that's why I wanted to kind of maybe say, you're in that transition period when they finally found, well, that doesn't work. Now you're moving to something bigger, and you move out of it. When you said, would you enthusiastically hire your team back again? And you said the number one answer was usually no. I 100% have seen that happen. That resonated. I feel you there. Yeah. Again, it's a different world. You have to find somebody, like you said at the beginning of the thing, somebody that's crazy enough. Steve Jobs, I love this speech that he made to a graduating class at Stanford, where he said, "You're crazy enough to change the world." And I think there's some of that inside the startup world, but there's also some negatives to it as well. Yeah.
He was really good at certain things, but he also had some downsides as well. Yeah. And that's what happens with leadership. Is I talk about leadership all the time, and I've come to believe that leadership is really not a thing. Meaning, you can't say, if you do these things, then you're a leader, right? Okay. Because or you have to be this way. And I've gone to it's like entrepreneurship seminars and conferences and things, and I see this list. You have to be humble and you have to be hungry, but if you look at great leaders, they're all different, right? Jobs is different than Mulally, then is different than Warren Buffett, then is different than Bill Gates, and they're all very different. What happens is people gravitate towards them for some compelling reason, usually some sort of vision that they have, and they will forgive them the other stuff.
Yeah.
Right? You have to be charismatic. Warren Buffett is not charismatic.
Yeah,
I'm
not at all.
sorry, he's just not. But man, he's built some really good stuff, and there's a lot of people who are really happy to work for him. So there's just all these things. Humble. Steve Jobs was not humble. He had little or no integrity. But he was really good at this thing and doing these things, and people are like, yeah, I want to help him do that. That's what, to me, it's leadership isn't a thing. Followership is a thing. If we really understand why people follow other people, then that is something you could study and replicate.
It's like in the world of Russell Brunson, it's called the attractive character. That one person that we want to be around, the person that we want to emulate, that we resonate with for whatever reason it might happen to be. I like that. Yeah.
Well, that's true for friendship, right? But they also have to a leader tells you where they're going, and you're like, wow, I want to go. They paint a picture so vivid that when you see it, you're like, man, I want to do that. It's like it already happened, and like, okay, I want to do that. Yes, I also think you're a compelling character, but I also want to help you do that. That's when they say, okay, I'll come work for you, as opposed to have dinner with you.
Interesting. I like how you summed it up, and I like how you said that, leader isn't just a checklist, because that's something that I've thought about for a while as far as like leadership. I've seen people who have checked all the boxes and still I don't feel are good leaders for a lot of reasons.
Yeah, it's because the boxes are wrong. It's not, there's no real box, right? It's just, if you just look at all the great leaders that we see are great leaders, and you can see it today in politics, right? There are some people who think some guy's a great leader, and other people think he's horrible. Okay, so is he a great leader or not a great leader?
Yeah.
Tens of millions of people think he is, so there's something there.
Yeah.
Tens of millions of people think he isn't. So so leadership is you can't say I'm a great leader. People choose you as their leader. Leadership is that's what I'm saying. You can't say I'm the leader. You can say I'm the boss, but you can't say I'm the leader. They say you're my leader. I will follow you. So you have to do something that, again, I like that attraction, that you have to attract that in some way.
I saw a study at one point that went back through U.S. presidents specifically, and said who did the best, and they were the ones that painted that vision. This is my vision of the future, which I think was interesting. Yeah. So
as you said, we started because they told a story.
Yeah.
Right. They were really good at telling the story of us. Right. I mean, Lincoln did it in 263 words, right? Didn't need to be a long speech, but it was a really good one. And we still remember it 100 and something years later, because it's like, yeah, that's who we are. That's who we should be. I want to make that. I want a more perfect union, right? That's the vision, right, of the United States, a more perfect union. Are we perfect? No. Will we ever be? No. But if we can I would like to keep trying to be better. And people say, yeah, I want that. And we have lots of people moving here, probably fewer now, but over 100 and 250 years, give or take, we've had a lot of people say, yeah, I want to do that.
Yeah. Now let's switch, because a lot of small businesses fail at first, or in general. It's something that happens. And out of all of your experience, what are some of the things that you have seen that are repetitive, meaning like the common issues that cause companies to fail? What are some of the common denominators? That's the term I'm looking for.
Yeah. So what I've found is there are lots of ways to fail or struggle. About 8 or 9 years ago, I'm maybe not quite about that. I just used Google as a research, right? And I said, why do companies fail? And I just started writing down the reasons. I think I got to 35, and I just said, okay, that's a lot. I just stopped, right? So, but if you look at why companies succeed, at least from what I found, there's really only a few reasons why, and we can talk about that later. But what I boiled it down to is there's 10 really critical things that we do wrong, but we don't do them completely wrong. We just do them a little wrong. And then what happens when you get bigger and add more people and more stuff, they add up and they get heavier. And that's why I think most companies fail or struggle. It isn't, it's rarely one sort of catastrophic thing that happens. It happens over time. Success is the same way. It's really rare. I mean, you talked about Steve Jobs. He had a great quote. It takes a hell of a long time to become an overnight success, right?
Yeah.
It just takes work. It's you just got to keep going at it, right? So there are 10 things. So we do change, vision, people, teams, feedback, innovation, strategy, decision making, hiring, and meetings wrong.
Mm.
And again, we don't do them completely wrong. We just do them sort of wrong. So let's go back to your startup thing. The most important thing a founder needs to do is to find his or her number two. Because it's rare that you have one person that embodies all the things that you need, from vision to execution to operation, whatever, to motivation in one human. It's really rare that you see that. It's usually two, right? You got Jobs and Wozniak. You got Gates and the other guy. I can't remember his name now. So there's always these sort of two. This and Gino at EOS, I think, says it well, is sort of the vision and the integrator, right?
Yeah.
And that's really key. So that number two is really important. If you hire badly on number two, then that has a cascading effect, because he or she's gonna hire badly, et cetera. And so what I do when I go in and I teach my clients, I teach them how to do those things better. And I don't teach them my way. As we said, I'm, what did Einstein say? I'm not really much smarter than my peers. I just stick with things longer. And that's what I've been doing. I've been studying this for 30 years, right? I've read Drucker, Deming, Schein, McGregor, Edmondson, Porter. These are the thought leaders who said, here's the science behind business, which means it's been proven over and over again. If you do these things well, it should turn out really well. I mean, there's always factors in business that work against you, but if you do them well, you have increased your chances of making a success. So that's what I think really happens if you can get those 10 things and do them well, you have to do them perfectly, but it'll make your life so much easier to grow your business. And I always say, I think it's a shame that business leaders struggle for completely preventable reasons, and they rely far too much on force of will, luck, effort, and timing. Those don't scale. You have to, I think it was Lincoln who said, the best way to predict the future is to create it. And that's what I help my leaders do. I said, creation is an innovation process, which isn't about execution. It's about thinking. Execution is doing. Strategy, et cetera, is thinking. And if you don't have time to do the thinking, the doing will just get harder and harder and harder. So yeah. I don't know if that answers your question, but that's sort of my take.
No, and I love it, because I think, like, being a big fan of EOS, I like the fact that it leaves the visionary to do the visionary, and it leaves the integrator to make it happen. And I think they're two very distinct. They're two very different skill sets, and I think they're complementary. But it's one of those things where it's like, we don't often, especially when we were first starting off, especially as small businesses, we often, as visionaries, think that we have to operate as an implementer as well, and it doesn't usually work well. At least that's what I've seen in my experience.
Yeah,
but
I agree. And I really like the way Cameron Herold thinks about this is there's no particular like integrator person, set of things. It's the two things work together, and whatever you're not good at as the founder visionary is that is essential, is what the integrator should be good at. And then it's the bringing of those two things together. You have to find the right person that complements you in ways that you're weak. And you complement them in ways that you're weak. And if you're the visionary, you're constantly pulling them up, because the integrator is usually like, we got to slow down, we got to do this, we got to get it right. And the visionary is, we have to get it completely right. So, the visionary is pulling the other guy up, but the integrator is keeping the visionary, on the ground, right? Sort of in orbit. Because if you just did whatever the visionary said, you'd be doing 1,000 different things, because we could do anything, right? Just a matter of time and money and whatever. But you're like, no, but we're focused on this customer doing these things. This is who we are. That is not really who we are. So we could go do that, but we should start a second company and go do that.
Yeah, right. It's being able to say to the visionary is like, I just went to a conference and I have 1,000 really cool things I want to do.
Exactly.
And the comes back and says, great,
okay.
Which two are we going to do right now?
Exactly.
Which two fit? And I think it's a really, yeah.
And you need to build that, that's what I like about the framework. You need to build that framework, because those decisions get easier when you say, Does it meet with our values? Does it go with our purpose? Does our core customer care about it? Does it actually create a bigger space, white space in the market so we can actually differentiate ourselves even more from our folks? I mean, you have to, but you have to put all those things in place first. You have to set the standards first, so then you can make those really good decisions. And you should only make a few of them once in a while. Let everyone else make the operational decisions.
Mm-hmm. And I think that, like we were talking about earlier, where the transition between startup and, what's your job position, yes, all the things, to that kind of becoming bigger and putting those systems in place is a transition that I've seen people have difficulty with. And so it's nice to, I'm part of a couple of companies that are going through that transition right now too. So I think it's really what you do and how you come in to assist is incredibly necessary. And I think it's a really valuable and really essential part of kind of building, at least from what I've seen. So I appreciate that.
Sure.
So as we're coming to the end of things here, what I do want to ask is one question: a book or a podcast. I might have an idea what you're going to say, but we're going to let it go. A book or a podcast that has had a major impact on your life.
That is a good question. So as you can tell, I'm a bit of a science guy. I like to understand cause and effect. And I've also seen that most businesses fail, as I said, for preventable reasons. And mostly it's because we're doing things that seem like they're correct, but they're not. And I think Mark Twain said something along those lines, which it ain't the things that you don't know that get you in trouble. It's the things you know for sure that just ain't.
Yeah.
And so the best book I've read that really it reinforced some things I already knew, and then helped me think about things even more deeply than I hadn't yet. It's called 9 Lies About Work or something like that.
Interesting. Okay.
Marcus Buckingham.
By who? I'm sorry.
Marcus Buckingham. He used to be at Gallup. He's the Strengths Finder guy.
Okay.
If you know that, he worked with Don Clifton a long time ago, and also now works at ADP. He's a researcher. He's like, he goes in and says, why are things the way they are?
Okay.
He's not a hypothesis guy. A lot of people like hypothesis, like, this is what I think is true. He's like, well, why? He's sort of like Jim Collins, right? Jim Collins said, why are these companies more successful than those companies?
Okay.
Can I find the things underneath? Buckingham does that, and he's done a great job over the last 20, 25 years. And I really love that. So I would say, I think it's 9 Lies About Work, something like that.
Okay.
Great book.
We'll look it up. Is he an organizational psychologist? An IOPsych, an industrial and organizational psychologist?
I don't think he's a doctor or has a degree in that at all. Okay. He just loves data.
Yeah.
And the data has led him to understand that, how humans act. And, we like to say human beings, our default is irrational, emotional, and impulsive. Yes. It is not logic. And so don't act like it is. And I have to say, if leaders don't know a little bit about neuroscience, and that would be the second book, which is by David Rock, and it's all around how we're not rational beings at work. We have to understand how we are at work, and I think it's your brain at work, I think, is the name of that book. So those would be two things that I would sort of put out there for your listeners. I love it. And I tend to get kind of nerdly, and I like to look into why things are working the way they are and kind of get into people's heads. So I truly appreciate what you do. And I appreciate that you bring this level of kind of science to what can be a very emotional thing, especially when you're working with visionaries. We tend to be emotional. So I really appreciate what you do. So thank you, Bill. Thank you so much for being on the show today. I really appreciate you having here. And I appreciate the wisdom that you've dropped with us today. Happy to help. Thanks, Andrew. Awesome. Thank you. Thanks again for joining us on the Hustle and Grind podcast. If you'd like to learn more about Bill, check out the link in the description.